Hey, everybody. In today's episode, it's myself, Stevie Buckets, and a good friend of ours, Brian. Brian was, in fact, on the podcast before, episode 361, in fact. I encourage you to go back to listen to it, and he shares his story. But today is an update. Brian just celebrated 14 months of sobriety, and he is doing amazing. This is a blueprint. If you want to stay sober, do what Brian did. It's that simple. We go into details on what treatment was like for him, and ultimately transitioning back home to Philadelphia and some of the hardships that he had to go through, but he kept his sobriety intact the whole entire time, and he's doing absolutely amazing right now. So I know you're going to love this. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I'm your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Stevie Buckets.
Happy to be here.
And Brian. Brian, how are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, peeps?
That's right.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Brian.
How are you?
Good. You're going to need to speak up a little bit.
Okay.
Or I'll just do.
I can speak up.
So Brian was, in fact, on the show, episode 361. I did a little bit of research, so it's been a while.
About 10 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
So wanted to bring Brian on to give us an update on how things are going. Brian did, in fact, come through our program and, transitioned back home and got back into the swing of things. And here we are. So you're down here. What was the purpose of you coming back down here for a little vacation? Have you heard of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but you don't really know what it is or what it consists of? Well, it has gotten millions of people sober at this point. It came out in the 1930s. And myself and Eric, we want to take you on a journey through the Big Book so you can better understand what is in this book. It's very influential and has helped millions of people. Now, how do we do this? We go live every single Monday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. How can you become a part of this? Go to realrecoverytalk.com/bigbookstudy and register. It's 100% free. I want to see you there. Family members, loved ones, people in recovery, you're all invited. It's for absolutely everybody. So if this is something that you're interested in, again, realrecoverytalk.com/bigbookstudy, register, and I'll see you on Monday.
Just vacation. I mean, my husband and I used to come down to Florida before my addiction got really bad, pretty frequently, like, a couple times a year. And, when my addiction got really bad, it was actually right before COVID, and just, everything kind of went by the wayside. But, then my addiction got really bad and we just stopped traveling, basically stopped living.
Yeah.
So, now that things have sort of, evened out a little bit for both of us, he's also sober. So, it was a really nice experience to come down here and enjoy the beach and, not have to focus on going out to bars and, waking up with a hangover. And so it's just an actual vacation.
Smoking meth and
Smoking meth.
Yeah. Yeah. You tried keeping it PG there, but you're dealing with more than a hangover.
Oh yeah. I mean, meth and G and ecstasy. Yeah. I mean, the whole gamut.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think of Brian here? I think he's doing phenomenal.
I think he's doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys know each other like in a past life?
In a past life, perhaps.
In some No, do you know each other in some capacity prior to this stuff?
Well, my former neighbor, who I kept in contact with, and not really kept in contact with, but he had, he knew he was one of the few neighbors I spoke with and talked to. He knew I work in the field, and he would talk about Brian every once in a while. Oh, my best friend's husband is off the chain. I'm paraphrasing, like this. And I'm like, well, and I would give like advice here and there, and then he hit me up and he's like, it's really getting bad. I forgot the details of it, but eventually I got on the phone with Brian and I think you hung up on me. I think you hung up on me.
Oh,
If I'm
yeah.
not mistaken, and yelled at me. But it's just honestly, I think about Brian. I think about just like with all of us when we're in our addiction and when we're recovery, how just is such a stark difference because Brian's such an amazing person. And but yeah, it was like I didn't know if you were going to come down and be willing, and eventually, obviously,
Yeah.
he did, and it's been great,
So I had some ideas on where I want to take this, and so you're coming up on what, 14 months clean?
Just 2 days ago was 14 months.
Congrats.
Thank you.
I want to talk about what it was like transitioning home, because you spent how much time in Florida in treatment?
Just under 5 months.
Okay, so you've now been back in Philly, right?
Yeah, for about 9 months.
9 months.
Yeah.
Take us through those first couple of days, really leaving Florida and going back to Philly. What was that like?
Well, it's funny so my plane ride back, there was like a 4 or 5 hour delay. So, like there was that typical, where the fear of being at the airport and, like having that airport relapse or whatever. I didn't have that. I mean, I'll be honest, but,
You didn't have that fear.
I did not have that fear.
Okay.
I mean, like I felt pretty confident that, that if I was going to have any issues or whatever, like I went into it knowing that I had people here that I could call, or, but I, by that point I spent so much time down here and I invested so much time and I had so many tools to work with that, I wouldn't have left here, if I didn't feel like I was ready. But I don't think that, I mean, I think I originally came down, expecting to be down here for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And,
That's the case with most people.
Yeah. And, then it was 3 and then it was 4. And, I really needed to be away from the entire element of Philadelphia because, it's different down here where, you can get in your car and you can avoid certain places. Whereas if you're in a city like Philadelphia, where everything's concentrated, you walk by, no matter what, you can't avoid, situations and people. I mean, even now when I walk on the street, I don't even use earbuds. I put headphones on and I have sunglasses because I will literally ignore certain people, like, and pretend I don't see them because, you have to do that. I mean, because, it's not like you're driving in your car and you could just go past an area that you used to, hang out at.
Hey, first off, thanks for letting me interrupt the episode. I want to take this time to invite you into the Sobriety Network. It's our Facebook group that we put together, and it is open to absolutely everybody: family members, loved ones, people in recovery, people that want to be in recovery. We want to see you there, and you can just go into Facebook, type in the Sobriety Network, answer a couple of questions, and we'll let you in. It's a good place for you to come and just talk with people, ask questions, interact, and get the support that you need. So I'm excited to see you there, the Sobriety Network.
So, when I finally left here, I felt that I was ready, but I made sure that, even on that 4 or 5 hour layover at the airport, I was in constant contact with my husband and my family and my friends. And, I think I called, Marie from here. And like, even though I was fairly confident, I still knew that there was that possibility that, I had a bar right there, or, that I would be able to, if I really wanted to, just, walk out, grab my luggage and, go find drugs or something,
Right.
So from there, I got home fairly late. I wasn't able to make a meeting, but because I got home at like almost midnight, but I made a meeting at like, I think like 8 or 9 in the morning the next day. And it was, I immediately got connected, with people that I knew in Philadelphia. I had actually reached out to people prior to going home, to know where the meetings were, and like to know. I made sure that I knew a few people already in the program, and I started going to AA. When I went to AA, I found a few people that were in CMA, which is Crystal Meth Anonymous, and I ended up. That is actually the program that I work now, but I got really involved with that, and I mean, I now I'm the secretary of the intergroup
It's
for the
awesome.
Philadelphia region. I chair meetings usually like at least once a week, and I take over for other people when they need somebody to fill in for them. Um, I but there was definitely a struggle when I first got back. Like I was on Strattera while I was here, and it started making me really drowsy. So I had to wean myself off of that for the ADHD. And then I was on Zoloft as an antidepressant, and that wasn't really working for me. So I switched on to Prozac, and so there was a very big adjustment period where it was like trial and error, and it was the first time in my life that that I was able to monitor my reactions to things, and I didn't have like other substances in my body that were factors. So even though it was difficult. I mean, it's not something that you can do when you have other drugs and you're self-medicating.
Right.
And that was the important thing. And I would get feedback from my doctors and, feedback from my friends, like if I was acting crazy or, and, like I was getting advice from people. I had a therapist, I have couples counseling. So, I mean, like all of these things that I did, I spent all the time that I was focusing before on getting drugs and, having sex and, doing just illegal, illicit activities pretty much every moment of the day. And rather than focusing on that, I just focused on what made me feel whole, and working a program. And, so, it wasn't easy, but I mean, it was a lot easier than having to wake up the next morning, every day and explain my actions and put the pieces together like it was, like a murder mystery theater.
So there's so much there. I want to go over a few things that I heard that I think the listeners really need to take in. First and foremost, how long you were here in Florida in treatment. 5 months. Okay. That's very important because there's, certain programs and places out there that will, I don't want to blame the programs, right? But the idea that 30 days of treatment or even 60 days of treatment in a lot of cases, it doesn't work. Okay. And the reason it doesn't work is because it's not near enough time. Like your first 30 days that you were here, we were just trying to figure out who the hell you were. We had Brian come in who just talked and talked and talked and which was like, there was the medication component of it. There was you getting, we knew like one of the first things was, okay, we got to slow him down, and get him with his therapist, and made that happen. And then you and your therapist start building a rapport. Right. And that stuff takes place in 30 days, and I mean, 30 days is gone, snap of a finger.
Just your brain healing.
Yeah.
And how the cravings to kind of wane, if you will.
Right. So that's point number one. Point number two that I think is very important and something that you did was you reached out to these people before you left here. And I've said this so many times. Discharge planning needs to happen almost immediately upon admission, right? When somebody walks in here, discharge planning needs to be brought up, in some capacity. I'm not saying that it's like, set in stone. Okay, this is your discharge date, so on and so forth. Like, we don't operate that way. You know that. But it needs to be top of mind because in your situation, you knew you were going back to Philadelphia. You knew you had your husband there. Your family's there. That's where your life is, right? And it's not like you're some 22-year-old kid that can basically do whatever the hell they want. And, like you had responsibilities and all that stuff. But what I like what you did was you made, well, first thing is you took every moment of treatment and utilized it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that you did is when it came time, well, let me ask you this. At what point throughout your treatment process did you start reaching out to your supports back in Philadelphia or start like really formulating this plan? How long did that take you?
Almost immediately. I mean, some of the people that I reached out to, I didn't even end up using as support, but I made sure that they were there.
Yeah.
So when I ended up going back, I ended up getting a different group of people for support. However, the support was there, which is the more important thing, because you plan it as, okay, well, I'm going to have these people and these other people to support me. And the fact of the matter is you gravitate toward who you gravitate toward, and some people might not work out, and it's just how life is. But if you don't have a plan at all, then you're going to gravitate toward other people that don't have a plan.
Right.
And that's,
or they have a plan,
or they have a
plan,
but it's not a good one.
Yeah.
And I mean, another important thing to note is that life got very lifey when I got back. My ex-boyfriend got into like a fiery car crash and he died.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Like he burned alive.
Oh no.
And then my brother, I found out like a week later that my brother, who had Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which is wet brain,
mm-hmm.
he died.
I remember you talking about that.
Yeah. Well, he passed away and he died. He had dementia, and he died in the nursing home, and he had a heart attack, and they didn't tell us. So my sister ended up getting a call like a month and a half later from the morgue at the hospital, and it wasn't their fault, but they said, "Oh, what are you doing with your brother's body?" And she was like, "What are you talking about?" So now, mind you, my sister and I had just made amends to her about 2 months beforehand. So had I not been sober, like we were not on speaking terms.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that she was the devil. Meanwhile, it was me. So all of these things wouldn't have, there's no way I would have been able to deal with them had I not been sober. And, just the timing of it happening, if that would have happened, while I was still using, I don't think I would have been able to deal with it. And I mean, then like a couple weeks later, I had two of my best friends that I went to school with. They both died of drug overdoses. I mean, it was just, all of these things that happened that ordinarily I would have used as an excuse to go out and use were just reinforcements to me that, this is what happens if you let the drugs take over your life. Because, really, I mean, all four of those deaths were caused by either drugs or alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
or, the ramifications, and repercussions that resulted from them. My brother, drank all of his life and used drugs, and he ended up getting wet brain. My ex, I'm relatively sure, relapsed and got into a car accident, and the other two girls, died of drug overdoses at, I think they're both about my age. So they were like 47, 48. So, I mean, like what would be in store for me had I not gotten sober? So, I mean, rather than looking at it as, oh my God, look at all these horrible things happening to me, I'm going to go out and use, I said, okay, well, look at I mean, I hate to say it, but it's terrible that this happened, but, it's better that it didn't happen to me. I mean, because it could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it and look at it like that, because these are people that I loved, but, I mean, in the end, there's nothing that I could do to help them. I'm sure that they would rather, see me live on, than suffer the same fate that they did. So, so, I mean, I would never have been able to get through all that had I not been working the program, because my last relapse, when I went into this like 7-year tailspin was a result of my father passing away and then my mother passing away. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the program works, whatever program you use.
Well, you utilize it. You dive right in. So we talk as service commitment. You know what I mean? You're just plugged in because of that. Now you're attending meetings because that's your commitment. People getting to know you. The kind of unseen spiritual aspect of it. Of being of service is you did really. I couldn't, in terms of like the aftercare plan, I think you implemented it to a T. Which is great to see, and it works as you can see.
And I have friends that would take a bullet for me, which I they were friends before that would literally, if I got shot on the side of the road, would just leave me there.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like night and day. That if you looked at me a year and a half ago, you wouldn't recognize me.
I want to talk about the and real briefly when you were at the airport, because that's a very real life situation for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I like what you said about I would have not gone home had I not felt prepared to go home. Let me ask you this. Was anything in your preparation of going home external?
I mean, most of it was internal, but I mean, you can't really control the external environment, but you can control how you react to it.
Okay.
So I wouldn't really place myself. I mean, I certainly didn't sit next to the bar, I mean, there were things.
I guess what I'm getting at, and I understand what you're saying. The point I'm trying to make is you didn't allow external circumstances make the decision for you to go home, right?
Oh, no.
It was internal.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of times we see people make decisions, and in fact, we have one taking place right now. He's going to be boarding a plane this afternoon.
Yeah.
He's going home. And he's going home because of a job, right? And maybe, I don't know what other circumstances, but that's external.
Oh, yeah. Then in that instance, no. And on that note, I think a lot of the one thing that really does need to be addressed is I was lucky. My husband was pretty receptive to me staying in treatment, but even he, it took a couple of months to convince him because people, even the movie 28 Days, people see that movie and they're like, oh, look, great, Sandra Bullock, she goes to rehab and she's fantastic. And it's like 28 Days is detox,
Right.
It's and people don't realize the difference between that. That's basically just getting your mind and your body, literally detox, like the poison out of your, system. It has, the damage that you've caused, could take months and years, to be repaired. But I mean, just for your mindset to change and to have like these paradox shifts that you need to be able to, look at situations objectively. It takes years, but I mean, I'm not saying you go to rehab for years. It's probably not feasible.
But you set the foundation for.
But you set a foundation, yeah. And I mean, especially, I mean, I speak a lot. I do like H&I commitments up north, and I mean, I'm gonna tell you that the sober houses up there, and they are shit. I mean, I don't know how anybody can get sober up there. I mean, more often than not, they're just flop houses. And I mean, I know that there's their share down here, but I would always, I would go into places and people would say, oh, well, you went down to Florida. Oh, that must be nice. And I'm like, you know what? Figure out how to get the plane ticket down there and then figure out the rest later because, I see people up there, they're spending like $200, $300 a week for rent to stay in some house where like, people are doing drugs and this and that.
Mhm.
And it's insane. And it's just nothing is organized. And, it's like they're working against the current and, it's so much better down here. Just the community. But what I was saying was with family members, like they have to realize that if you're in treatment for a month or two, you're gonna keep going back if you don't have enough time to actually fully
Yes.
immerse yourself in the program. So it's not like, oh yeah, well, we need you back to work or whatever. What's going to happen there? You're going to go back and you're going to be home for a week and you're going to relapse. It's almost inevitable.
And it's like you said that seems to be like actually like a topic of conversation the last week with a few clients. Which I've heard, do it right now. Take 4 months of your life or the rest of your life. I've heard now, like do it now. So, or rather than for the next decade, in and out, in and out, in and out. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Well, how many times do we have conversations amongst us staff? When somebody's, I had one this morning with Ben. I said, well, we got to keep tabs on so-and-so because so-and-so is leaving after 30 days. And every one of us have tried talking this person out of it, but they're not having it. So, we have those conversations amongst staff members of, hey, we got to keep tabs on them. We know they're going to end up back.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they end up back. And this person is letting external circumstances dictate what's in their best interest. And it's unfortunate because there's no job, there's no nothing that is more important than somebody's sobriety. And being able to recognize that and act and look simply through that framework of what is ultimately most important right now. All things set aside, what's most important? Sobriety. Okay, so what can I do that's in my best interest that promotes sobriety? And it's never going back home prematurely. It's never going back to the job that you may or may not have.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to throw ourselves back into these situations because it takes precedent over sobriety. And then it just kicks the can down the road. How many people have we seen come in and out of treatment, whether it's here or anywhere else? I mean, I've talked to people that I talked to 5-7 years ago.
Same here.
That are still, on this, on the hamster wheel. It's like, what are you doing? And it's funny, every single time, it's like they always still have a plan. I'm going to do this time. This will be it'll be different this time. Like, based on what? You haven't, if you have a plan, then you're screwed. The best thing is to not have a plan,
There's also another thing that I think is pretty important to note. A lot of people, especially when they're, in the first few months when they're getting sober, because I mean, I remember when I was here, and this is especially true for people that are coming off of like uppers because they're experiencing some level of psychosis or, and they're very paranoid and they're very, suspicious and, they're saying, oh, well, they're just trying to keep me in treatment because they want my money. And, and it's like, I hate to tell you, but there's, for every person that's in here, there's a dozen people that would kill to be in here. So, it's, the reason why people that work here want you to stay longer is, because the recidivism rate of people, I mean, even from me being a client here, there were people in that 5 months that I saw come back, once or twice in that 5-month period, and I mean, that was just I mean, I'm sure they've probably been back a few times since then. I mean, there's people that I've heard sharing their stories that, say they've been, to rehab like 30 or 40 times. And I'm like, first of all, I have to give them credit for even trying that many times. But, just the fact that that's even possible, it's just, it blows my mind.
I think there's a level of enablement there.
Yeah.
There's a couple facilities in the area that I know have brought in clients back to their facility 7, 8, 9, 10 times. That's ridiculous. And if I'm a client and I know, I can just get high and go back to this place,
Yeah.
a lot of times they're going to do that,
Yeah.
and we kind of have a 3-strike rule,
Yeah.
3 times over the course of, a couple of years is about where we fall, anything more than that, we just, we can't, it just doesn't make sense. For whatever reason, maybe you need a new experience or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't want to enable to.
Yeah, and exactly.
We don't want to be
right. You don't want to just be like, oh yeah, come on in. But we have, I don't know how many people we have here right now, 22, 24, something like that. Because Brian, you're right. We hear this all the time. Oh, it's all, you're a treatment center. You guys are making money hand over fist. And it's like, first off, that's not true. Second off, if I were to line up all 22 people that are in here now, 2 or 3 of them pay the bills. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, in other words, 75% of the people that are here, we're losing money on.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that like we have some people that kind of pick up the slack.
Yeah.
In terms of insurance companies, they're all over the board.
Yeah.
And we just talked about this on a podcast not long ago where we actually, and we've done this before, we've had to show clients, one in particular, he was like, you guys should be giving us lobster tails and steak and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, because he said something to the tune of, my insurance is paying for this. And we had to show him, we're getting paid $11 a day for you to be here. It costs us almost $400 a day per person. Cost is close to $400 a day. And we gave him this, and you know who I'm talking about.
He's doing great now, by the way.
Yeah.
He's doing really good.
He's doing phenomenal.
Yeah.
But everybody gets treated equally. We don't let insurance companies dictate clinical treatment. We don't let the financial side of it dictate. Now, if you're an absolute asshole and you're a disruption to the community and stuff like that, and you don't pay us anything, well, your time's going to be short-lived here.
But we've also said, hey, you're not someone who is the best payer. We've also said, I remember thinking of someone very vividly who unfortunately wasn't great for the community, and we weren't seen to be helping them too, and we had to show this person, refer them out.
Oh yeah, and there's facilities out there that wouldn't.
Yeah, just deal with it, but it wasn't. We'll work with you. We'll meet you halfway for a certain amount of time, but like you got to ideally be a positive influence on the community.
So how's things been overall? Pretty good.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah. You're doing a CMA.
CMA, yeah. So
not to be confused with
Anonymous.
Country Music Award.
Yeah.
Although that is a good code for us.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Going
to the CMAs.
Yeah.
We've actually said that. Sometimes it confuses people listening because we're like, you go to the Country Music Awards tonight? People look around, they're like Googling it, like, wait, is that on tonight?
It's hilarious.
Things been pretty good though?
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I have, back with my dog and my husband. So, but the simple things, but I mean, it's night and day. I mean, I did have a period of sobriety like 7 or 8 years ago. Well, actually maybe a little bit more, but, when I went back to school, and I was doing really well, but I wasn't working a program. And it was one of those things where, that was around, when my father passed away, and, like once something major happened in my life and I didn't have the support group and I didn't have, the tools, and at that point, when something like that happens and you're that disconnected, it's difficult to reach out to people. It's if you're connected all the time, I mean, I go to like 6 or 7 meetings a week. I pretty much go every day. It's like a default. If I can't make it one day because I have something, then I don't go. But, I mean, and it's my social life. That's my friends, and I mean, and I go and I participate and I enjoy it. And, like that's, that's who I hang out with. I don't search for people that, I mean, there are a few people in my life, that, if they respect my boundaries, if they drink or whatever, I mean, I can go out to dinner with somebody and they can have a drink, but when it's time for me to leave, if I start to feel uncomfortable, then I leave. I've had to, there's been a couple of people where, somebody in particular that, that means a lot to me, but they're still using and claim that they weren't, but they contacted me and I could just tell by the texts that they were still using. And I just said, I'm sorry, I can't, we're going to have to cancel, like it's just,
Yeah.
and yeah. And it was very unfortunate, but, it's one of those things that you have to do. And I said, I said, I still want to be friends with you, but, I said, unfortunately, I don't believe you, and like you just have to go with your instinct. And, sometimes it's really hard because, there's times where, like I'll feel guilty about it, because that's the old me, like that's, it's,
I was just thinking that you set boundaries now.
yeah, I set boundaries and some, but there's always, there's always like the old part of the people pleasing part of you that or the pressure that you feel sometimes to not to conform maybe to like to the peer pressure. And you know I'm fortunate that I have a core group of people that I can go to them and say, okay, this is how I feel, tell me if I'm being crazy. And sometimes they'll say, you know what, I think that this might be in your head because, I trust them. And, and sometimes they'll say, I think it's in your head. And I'll be like, I really don't think it is. And I trust them enough that they'll keep their eyes out for me and be like, no, it's in your head. So, but I didn't have, before the people that I surrounded myself with had ulterior motives. So of course I couldn't trust them because, it was like, being friends with, with 10 or 15 different thieves and they're all on their own side. So, it's like everybody's a bad guy, but, like you're assuming that this person's good because this person's bad. And it's like, no, they're both bad. Everybody's bad. And it's not that they're even bad people. It's just that, they're desperate and they're struggling themselves and, they're out for themselves. But that means it's not good for me. So, so it means it's bad for me, and I mean, like, I can't look at them as, oh, they're bad people, because then that would make me feel like when I do something wrong that I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It means that I'm making a bad decision, and I struggle with sometimes, making everything black and white. Like, you're either good or bad. And, and you can't look at life like that either, because then you get very down on yourself if you make a mistake and, then you're not forgiving. And, so, like seeing a lot of it is, for me, is seeing the different shades of gray. Because that was always difficult for me. And that's why I would be medicating myself, because I would say this is too difficult. Like I can't, like you're either my friend or you're not my friend, and there's no in between.
Just going to extremes.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're doing phenomenal.
Thank you.
I think, just being able to hear your story, and I love the fact that you're going to 6-7 meetings a week, and this is what this is all about, and you're at 14 months sober. I'm sure it went by really quick.
Yeah.
And there's people out there that, go to treatment 3, 4, 5 times in a span of 14 months.
Good point.
And just keep, digging the bottom out of a hole, and it's like, you can keep doing that, but it just gets worse and worse and worse. And, Brian, you've done a phenomenal job. you really like that's the blueprint. Go to treatment for as long as humanly possible. Don't let external circumstances dictate what's in your best interest in terms of your sobriety. Come up with a plan, stay connected, find purpose, all that stuff. And so keep it up, man.
Thank you.
Stevie Buckets, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, I just love how the story has played out and has continued to play out. And because I love Brian immensely. He's definitely one of my, thank you, man. You're just not to sound corny, but you are a light, bro. Like you really are. You're one of a kind. And I remember as you're talking, and like so many things I like just remembered. I remember when in my office doing your bio and everything. You're just a really special person. And it's just keep doing what you're doing. You're still just right at the beginning of this,
Yeah.
And it gets better.
Open invitation anytime you want to come on.
Thank you.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.